Queen Ola couldn't believe what was in her hands. She had to carry the hairs tangled in the comb up. In shock, she ran to the mirror to take a good look at herself. She let out a loud cry when she saw the scanty-looking hairs that were left on her head. In horror, she called her husband, King Emeka, to quickly come to her room. King Emeka discharged the people with him in his sitting room and rushed to his wife's room to know why she had called him the way she did. When he entered his wife's room, he met her crying and shouting, "I am finished! I am finished!" She showed her husband the comb covered in hairs. King Emeka, who was still very confused, took the comb from her. Looking at the hairs, he asked her where the hairs came from. "Those are my hairs. My hairs. My hairs are all gone." Queen Ola cried bitterly, destroying everything in her room. Her husband ran to stop her. He held her tight and refused to let her go. That was when he noticed his wife's hair. In shock, he asked her what she did to her hair. Queen Ola told him she had done nothing, that she noticed her hairs has been pulling out little by little, but was shocked when she brushed her hair that morning and saw such amount of hair in the comb. Without wasting time, the king sent for the best physician in his community to come treat his wife. Unfortunately, when the physician arrived and after examining the hair, he told them there was nothing he could do that would save the queen's hair, that it is a rare hair disease that cannot be treated. He advised and encouraged the queen to accept herself the way she was. When he left, Queen Ola told her husband she was not satisfied and pleased with the physician. She asked that other physicians from the neighboring community be sent for. All the physicians that came to the palace told the queen the same thing the first physician said. Gradually, Queen Ola lost all her hairs. She would cry all day and night and refused to leave her room. She stopped going to gatherings and occasions. When someone visits, she would hide in her room, ashamed to show up with no hair on her head. King Emeka tried all he could to encourage her and make her understand she was still the same person, with or without her hairs. But all this fell on deaf ear. Queen Ola sees a total different person whenever she looks at herself in the mirror. She was a woman that paid so much attention to her looks. She loved her long afro hair, which always made her stand out. She cannot imagine herself living without her hairs. The queen fell into depression. Nothing interested her anymore. She lost appetite even for her favorite meals. She continued to hide indoors. Her husband was worried he would lose his dear wife. He was trying all he could to bring his wife back to the life she lived, but nothing changed. One day, Queen Ola called King Emeka and told him to order all women and every girl child in their community to shave their hairs and to give order that no female must be allowed to keep hairs in their land. The king laughed so hard and told his wife what she was asking him to do didn't make any sense. He told her it was almost impossible to get all females to shave off their hairs, let alone maintaining it. He asked his wife why she was even making such a demand. Queen Ola told him because she has no hair and she doesn't want to be alone in that. The king told her it was a cruel decision and action. He asked her to forget that because he would never implement such. Queen Ola's condition worsened. This time she doesn't eat. This bothered the king so much. She would always tell her husband that he wanted her dead so that he would marry another wife. She told her husband that if he doesn't grant her just that one request, she would die in a short time. When the king saw that his wife was bent on starving herself to death, he gave her the power to carry out her plans. When the people first got the queen's message, they laughed it off. Some believed it to be rumor, until the queen stormed their marketplace without hair. There and then, she assembled all the market women present in the market. She told them it has been passed into tradition that no woman, no female in their land must be allowed to grow hairs, because she had noticed that most young maidens spend so much time on their hair instead of working so hard in the farm and at home. Also, it was brought to her notice that people with long healthy hair go about intimidating and insulting those with little or no hair. And for that, she had decided that everybody in that community must go without hairs on their head. She urged all of them to comply because she had shaved hers off to show a good example. She gave the whole women in that community 4 days to shave off all their hairs. When people saw their queen without hairs on her head, they knew it was serious than they had thought. Some who knew how mean their queen could be barbed their hairs, while a lot of them refused to touch their hairs. When the 4 days elapsed, the queen sent the palace guards to go into people's houses and search for women that had disobeyed her orders and bring them to the palace. When the guards started their search and captured few women and children and took them to the palace, the remaining ones cut their hairs and that of their daughters to avoid the queen's trouble. The queen used her own hands and cut the hairs of the few women that was brought to the palace, after which he sent them to work in her farm for 14 days. Nobody wanted to be subjected to such hard labor. The remaining yet to be cut shaved off their hair. Queen Ola was excited seeing all the women without hairs. She didn't stop at that. She wanted it to become a tradition and culture. She summoned the chief priest to the palace. When the chief priest learned why the queen had called him, he told Queen Ola, the king and the elders present in the palace that before it could be a tradition, there must be a human sacrifice, and with human blood it would be sealed to their land. The chief priest told them that a child must be brought to the shrine to be sacrificed to the gods. When the king and the elders heard what the chief priest said, they all told the queen to forget about it because they were not ready to stain their hands with a human blood. Queen Ola refused to listen. She asked her husband to leave it to her. She sent her 2 guards to neighboring community to abduct any child they see. The 2 guards left their land to another community, laid ambush, but they didn't see any child to abduct. The queen asked them to continue like that until they were able to bring home a child. It was on the 7th day that they captured a pretty young girl her mother had sent to collect salt from their neighbor. Without wasting time, they tied her mouth and carried her home. When they got to the palace, the king was mad. He asked his wife to return the girl from wherever they picked her from. He asked the queen to imagine that helpless girl was her child. Would she sacrifice her to the gods? Queen Ola hardened her heart and told her husband that someone must be sacrificed to the gods, and the young girl there was unlucky to be the one. The girl was taken to the shrine where the chief priest sacrificed her to the gods. Message was sent out to the people that going without hair has become a tradition, and whosoever goes against the tradition would be punished by the gods of their land. Gradually, other neighboring communities started referring to her community as a bald kingdom. The tradition was quite an odd one, and they would always laugh when they see people from her community. Women with long, healthy afro hair before were hurt when they were asked to shave their hairs. Some had cried, but they had no choice. With time, people made peace with it, and it started becoming normal to them. Queen Ola felt fulfilled and happy. Her confidence returned. She was pleased with herself and all that she had done. Few years after, the queen became pregnant. She cried out in joy that finally the gods had remembered her after so many years of being childless in her marriage. When King Emeka found out his wife was pregnant, he invited all the people to come eat, drink and marry because the gods had shown them mercy. The queen carried herself like an egg so that there won't be any story that touches the heart. She finally gave birth to a very beautiful girl. The girl was so pretty and has a long shiny hair. The queen fell deeply in love with her daughter the first time she held her in her arms. She named her daughter Anyanwu, which means sunshine. Anyanwu was growing so fast with her long shiny hair. She was a beauty to behold. Queen Ola became sad when Anyanwu clocked 8 months. She knew that once she is a year old, her hair would be cut. She loved the long hair on her daughter. It made her look so beautiful. She became very sad when Anyanwu clocked a year. She went to her husband and told her she doesn't want Anyanwu to have a haircut. King Emeka was surprised. He asked her if it wasn't her own choice and decision, and why should their daughter be exempted. He told her that nobody is above the tradition and that their daughter must have a haircut like the rest of the people. The villagers were already whispering and talking about Anyanwu still carrying her hair after a year. The queen set off to the shrine to meet the chief priest. The chief priest told her His hands are tied, that he can't twist the already established tradition. When the queen got home, she couldn't sleep well. She was restless. The next morning, she went to her husband and told him she no longer wants their people to be without hairs on their head. King Emeka told her that tradition, especially the ones sealed and established with a human blood, wasn't easy to be changed. He told her that what she was asking for was harder than she thought. The villagers were still watching and waiting for the queen to cut her daughter's hair, like she did to their hair. Queen Ola kept pleading and persuading her husband to please use his power as a king and abolish the birth tradition. The king invited the elders and his cabinet and told them he wanted a change in their tradition. He wanted the no-hair tradition abolished. The chief priest was sent for. When he arrived and learned why he was called, he told them that he must go back to the shrine to deliver their message to the gods, and after that, he would know what the gods said, and he would be back to give them the gods' message. He left the palace to his shrine to commune with the gods. He visited the palace after 2 days, where he told them what the gods had said. He told the king and his cabinet that the gods agreed and has given them power to change the tradition, but it must follow a certain procedure. First, people must be indoor, must remain in their houses for 3 good days. Nobody must be seen outside until after 3 days. On the 4th day, the whole community, including the king, must gather in the market square, where the gods will tell them the next thing to do. The message was spread throughout our community. People were happy when they learned that no hair tradition was about to be changed. They went gathering everything they might be needing for the 3 days they would be indoor. The community drum was beaten to remind the people that the first day of 3 days had come. Nobody was seen outside. Nobody dared leave his house in order not to attract the wrath of the gods. On the 4th day, people came out of their houses and headed to the market square, including the royal family. When the chief priest arrived, he started invoking the gods. After what seemed like ages, the gods finally spoke. The people were eagerly waiting to hear what the god had said to him. He turned to the king and told him, the god said that since they have started the journey to abolish the birth tradition, they must bring it to an end by completing just one task. Everybody wanted to know what the task was. The chief priest continued. He told the king that the god said that since the tradition took a human blood, it must be abolished with a child's blood as well. And the gods had demanded the child must come from the king's home. In shock, people opened their mouths wide open. The only child in the king's home was Anyanwu, the king's daughter, whom her mother was holding so tight to her bosom. The expression on the queen's face could not be explained. The chief priest continued. The gods has demanded for Anyanwu's blood. The people shouted. The queen stood up with her daughter crying. She ran to her husband and asked him not to let them sacrifice her daughter Anyanwu to the gods. The king was also in tears. He told her the gods had spoken and their words are final. The queen quickly carried her daughter and meant to run away, but she was stopped. Anyanwu was taken from her. There and then, the chief priest took a knife and slit her throat. Our story has come to an end. I hope you really enjoyed the video. What moral lesson did you learn from the story? Please do subscribe to this channel for more interesting videos. Leave a like for us as well. Thank you so much for your time. Bye.